Hello everyone and welcome to Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. As you can tell, we're in a slightly different setting this week. A special Cheltenham Festival preview coming your way. It is a pleasure to be alongside this excellent panel. The worst thing about previews, I always think, is just the non-stop chitter-chatter that actually ends up with not much at the end of it. So my aim as the host of tonight is to corner the four gentlemen to my left into selections and not just jibber-jabber on aimlessly. So with that in mind, I'm going to start with Pat Cooney for day one. And bear in mind that we will try and complete each day in about 40 minutes or so. But we start with day one, Pat. Obviously, before we get into the prices for the first race, Bet365 providing offers on each day.
Yeah, we're going to be doing every race at the festival will have a price boost on one particular horse. That's down to our esteemed traders to pick one at certainly at the top end of the market that they think is going to be vulnerable. So that'll be an advantageous price there. So watch the site for that. And from 10 o'clock every morning there'll be a super boost where horses will be dramatically increased in price again at the top end of the market. So yeah, they're bold and brave, the traders. They talk a big game, so they can back it up this time around.
Okay, well, let's start with the Supreme Novices Hurdle. And you can tell us what the market is suggesting at the moment. Facile Vega, who would have thought he would be the price he is now a few weeks ago?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, before Christmas, he was bordering on being odds-on for the race, and then, of course, he flopped last time out. And he was overtaken as favourite. He became very weak in the market behind Marine Nationale of Barry Connells. But he's got support behind him now. It seems as though the initial disappointment has come and gone. Yes, the tactics were a bit of a cock-up all around that day, and he's now going to be favourite, I'm sure, for the race. But he's 5-2, 7-2 Marine, Gaelic Warriors 11-2. He might have Ballymore possibilities as well, maybe. I don't think he'll shorten up too much more than that because it's the first race of the meeting, day one. All the bookmakers will go against the front couple in the market here on the basis we've got 27 races to get it all back. So these prices are bound to get bigger, the top ones in the market. So don't be afraid to back one at a biggish price each way. Okay. I think a horse like Chasing Fire, who's 5 from 5 in his career for Ollie Murphy, he's around about 16-1 chance. And you look at his form, he's been winning easily. Egg and spoon races, perhaps, maybe. But yes, I think it's hard to justify him being as big as he is compared to the ones at the top end of the market. But as I say, the message is everyone will be big and brave in the bookmaking world on day one, race one.
Yeah, everyone's big and brave before the festival starts. Everyone thinks they're going to back all 28 winners. But I want to pick up on a point that you alluded to, tactics regarding Facile Vegas. We've got Nick with us because it was very rare, Nick, to hear Willie Mullins talking about a couple of rides that Paul Tannen gave horses at the Dublin Racing Festival with a little bit of criticism. What did you think of that? What did you think of Facile Vega's ride? What did you think of Facile Vega's hopes for the Supreme Novices Hurdle?
Going into Cheltenham, I would actually look at it as a positive because they won't make the same mistake twice.
Paul won't make the mistake.
Well, yeah. But obviously they felt that going forward was the thing to do, you know, because in the previous races it worked. And then the Joseph O'Brien horse, High Definition, who reopposed it this time, is a thorough stayer. And JJ Slevin thought, well, let's take him on and see how well you do stay. But I think it was a blessing in disguise in the fact they learned so much that day. The stay mistake won't happen twice. I think Facile Vega is up there with Constitution Hill in my eyes. It's the perfect racehorse. It's by a sire called Walk in the Park, who in jump racing terms is the best about, and it's out of Corvega, who's a dual Cheltenham Festival-winning mare. So if ever you could build a racehorse, it would be Facile Vega. And you know, her career is not just going to be this year. It's could well be Champion Hurdles, Gold Cups. His career, going forward. So for me, tactics. If it takes a lead, it won't be a worry. And if the rain comes, it showed last year that it can cope with conditions. So I would be thinking 2-1's a fantastic price personally, and if that's what you give, and then I'll back the distances on top of that really to double your money.
What are you giving, Pat?
Can jockeys bet?
Well, he's currently 5-2 at the moment. I think he'll be bigger on the day as well. So
bigger on the day, yeah. Johnny. What do you think about bigger on the day for Facile Vega?
Yeah, like good horse of like Constitutional was sent off 9-4 in this race, and you think about it, 9-4. So what do you like get 325% return in 4 minutes or like 4 seconds as far as he was concerned. And Vautour went off a big price. I would be worried about the run the last day. I'm glad you mentioned that, Rishi. I thought it was strange that Willie Mullins called out Paul Townend, and in hindsight, I'm not sure he was right. And as much as you might go quick, the horse was absolutely legless turning in. So I am willing to forgive him that, because I'm kind of going with what Willie has said about this horse. He's never spoken about a horse like he has spoken about him. Now, Barry Connell has never had a runner in Britain, and he thinks he's going to send 2 horses over to Cheltenham, his first 2 runners, and he says, I'll be disappointed if either of them loses. And I said, what about Good Land? If Good Land ran in the Supreme? He said, if I didn't run Marine Nationale in the Supreme, Good Land would win the Supreme. And then I was thinking, and then I was at Huntington Races yesterday, and I asked him, should I tip his horse? And he gave me a cold message for it. He said, no, I wouldn't be. And it ran shite, so I was like, okay, maybe Barry's on the button. But Marine Nationale is very good. I think he'll prefer the better ground. I like Facile Vega on the basis of what he did as a bumper horse. I think Walk in the Park is grossly overrated. He's 25 grand a pop for a National Hunt Stallion. You look at all the horses JP McManus has sent to him, and a lot of them look average, but he does produce some very good horses, including Duvan, obviously, and Min, and I'm willing to give him another chance. I think he'll bounce back, and I think he will settle on the day if he isn't worried about the pre-preliminaries, which I'd be a small bit worried about because he can be a bit hot, but I think he's very, very good.
Okay. Sam, are we just going to concentrate on the Irish horses for the first race? Ignore Tamuras, Chasing Fire, maybe.
Yeah, they're lovely horses in their own right, aren't they?
Lovely.
And Paul Nichols has got some really good novices to go to war with.
Lovely horses.
Lovely horses.
They're lovely horses.
Such a trainer talk.
You wouldn't mind owning them, would you? And they'll win their 2s and 3s, but I really do think they're going to struggle up against, well, there's a triumpher at the top of the market, Facile Vega being one of them. I think Marine Nationale's a proper machine. If he gets a bit of good ground, and that's the first thing to look at, is the weather forecast. You read some forecasts, it's 50 mil of rain before now and Tuesday. Other forecasts are nowhere near that. So trying to find one of those accurate weather forecasts, like trying to find an accurate tipster, isn't it? 5 chances here. So I would be Marine Nationale man myself. I think he's got gears, he travels well. His jumping could be a little bit more proficient, if I'm honest, but he's only, he's very lightly raced over hurdles, but I just think the ability to travel off a strong pace, and I think there probably will be a strong pace in this. I think there'll be plenty of runners, and that'll suit him. And he's been off 100 days, nice fresh horse, and I think the stable have done remarkably well this year with their novices and various other horses, so I think he's the number 1 pick for me. I don't think you should underestimate Elete Tom either. I know the race fell apart for him a bit at Leopardstown, but the speed figure was tremendous.
Okay.
He's got loads of experience, obviously finished, was he 5th in the Triumph Hurdle? So he's been around Cheltenham as well, which is more than most of these have done. I think he's a major player as well. If it's really soft ground, I'd probably go with him, and if it's good ground, Marine Nationale.
Yeah. Well, as you all know, that with a week to go before the Cheltenham Festival starts, there have been a few previews already, and there's a vibe for Diverge. I've picked up on a vibe for Diverge so far. At 1 or 2 previous. Any thoughts on whether any of you on the panel fancy Diverge, or is this
Irish
I picked up the wrong vibe?
Yeah, I haven't necessarily gotten those vibes, to be honest. So it's news to me. I guess we've got to diverge on that.
Johnny Deneen's already done 8 previews, hasn't he?
Exactly. I think they all came from Johnny Deneen.
Somebody asked me for his number today. He should be turning up. And then I texted David Jennings. He goes, "You're the 4th person to ask me in the last hour for Johnny Deneen's number." So I think it's going to be a fascinating betting race as well. And what Sam says about the weather is interesting, because that deluge that they got on day 2 yesterday or last year was so mad that it wasn't forecast, and it changed everything. And it's hard to call at this stage. You can't be guaranteed it'll be. I don't know, Nick. Can be guaranteed it'll be goodish ground.
Last week I was at Cheltenham on the race course, and they were piling on the water, petrified that they can't have a good ground Cheltenham or riding quick, and it was edging towards good to firm, and they were plastering the water. Anyway, I was there this morning, and I could notice the taps weren't quite full on, and I think they don't know what scenario they're going to get. There's so many different forecasts, but apparently it's raining there today or this evening, so and if that rain does come, it's actually not on top of good to firm. It's going to be on top of goodish ground. So if you're picking your bets, I'd be looking for slow ground horses.
I have to
Okay.
admit to my first bluff of the night. I was like, who the fuck is Diverge? I could not remember who he was. So he was amazing the last day. And probably would be the first Frankel bred winner at the festival. He absolutely.
Great
I'd say his
knowledge.
speed figure the last day. I don't know. I'd say it was good because he won. He was up in the van throughout, absolutely bolted up. But
Okay. I won't do
there
that
you
to
go.
the panel again.
I was like, dude.
Johnny, you thought they'd won Britain's Got Talent, didn't you?
Okay, no more random horses for you guys. Okay, I like Marine Nationale as well. I like the fact he's coming in fresh, and I think what he did after making the mistake at the last flood of hurdles when he won last time was tremendous. Great attitude. That's what I like. Okay, that's the first race, the Supreme Novices Hurdle. We'll move on and talk about the Arkle, Pat. 2-horse race, El Fabiolo, John Bond.
Put it a 2.5 horse race, I think, really. The half being Dysart Dynamo.
Don't fancy the half much against those two.
There's 22 in the race at the moment. You can see it falling apart. Be interesting to see how many Willie Mullins actually ends up running in the race, or will he just rely on El Fabiolo? And if that is the case, then he means business. And, you go to Aintree over hurdles at the Grand National meeting. There wasn't much between them that day. There's not much between them in the market. El Fabiolo just about favourite at the moment, but I will say I'm very confident John Bond will go a favourite for this race. Right. I think he's got enough momentum behind him in the market. There was good reports of him galloping at Kempton during the week.
Really?
One of these typical Nicky Henderson away days. And I spoke to Mick Fitzgerald this morning, who virtually lives down there at the stable, and he said the horse looks $1 million, as indeed I'm sure El Fabiolo does as well. But John Bond, we all ummed and ahed about the Warwick run. Admittedly, the runner-up that day has come out and won since, so maybe we shouldn't hang him out to dry too much for that run. But John Bond has always been on his radar. It was hard to back El Fabiolo at the start of the season because you never knew which was going to be the Willie Mullins number one. Well, it's definitely him. Yeah. He looked the part. He's going to be very hard to beat. A lot of people, I'm leaning towards John Bond. I think his overall CV reads better. Dysart Dynamo is the interest runner. I keep getting people saying to me, he's a knocking each way, but I'm not so sure, really. I think he's a bit of an all or nothing.
Absolutely.
But what's going to be in his favour, this is 2 miles. When he ran at Leopardstown, it was 2 miles 1, wasn't it? So it's going to be that bit easier for him to try and make all. But when the big two go by him, he's no gimme to be third. So this race has got a very awkward-looking each-way angle to it. If you can guess the runner, you could be back in a 50-1 chance each way that gets in the frame.
He settles better over fences, but you can't. I mean, when he exited in the Supreme, he was absolutely dead. And, I couldn't have him at all.
Okay. Who do you
Pat,
like?
you must be on the platinum service from the Henderson yard, because the word I've had is that John Bond worked like a drain last week.
Wow. Well,
really dull.
I mean, this is just
apparently.
typical, isn't it? Don't believe a word of these previews.
Don't believe a word the bookmakers tell you, Rich. That's for the key. Okay. No, he was quite dull, and I think they were a little bit disappointed. Now, things can turn around quite quickly with that yard, as we well know. Obviously, Shishkin's come alive. You've only got to go back to Binocular. These horses that were 1,000-1 to even make the race can go and win a championship grade race. So you wouldn't write him off. But I don't think El Fabiolo has got a lot to fear from John Bond, if I'm honest. I think the speed figure for that Leopardstown performance was astonishing. He came clear. He's a strong stayer as well. He's got class. He jumps well. Apart from that mistake 4 out, which I think they did rather conveniently sweep under the carpet. It was quite a monumental error. But the fact that he still had the wherewithal to go and record the figure that he did off the back of that was astonishing for me. I think if there's an each-way thief bet, it'd probably Saint Bois, because I don't think he's in any other race, is he?
He's in the Grand Annual.
He's in the Grand Annual, is he? All right.
He might be there to... I don't know if he's there to weight structure the race for the others in the Grand Annual, but he is in the Grand Annual. Right. He's actually not that big in the Grand Annual either, price-wise.
Okay, so you're sticking with El Fabiolo.
El Fabiolo for me, yeah.
Johnny, El Fabiolo?
I do like him. I think he's practically flawless. I'm wondering if Nick has seen John Bond in the flesh.
Yeah, for 570,000,
he'd want to be.
Yeah, he'd want to be. But for me, this is a future Gold Cup horse. He probably wants a trip. 2 miles is going to be his minimum, but I think he's sure to get a good pace. He's an exceptional jumper. Nicky Henderson does so well with his horses, and he'll be at his prime on Tuesday, not probably at Warwick. And I think Aidan was just playing safe at Warwick. Harry tried something down the back. I think people look too much into that, and he did it easy. For me, he's the perfect animal, and going forward, you could be Nicky Henderson. He's got Constitution here. He's got this horse. They could be looking at 2 Gold Cup horses in the future there. So that's the sort of the level I look at him at.
Who's the best looking horse in Cheltenham this year then?
Orkin Wrist in the Grand Annual. No, Constitution Hill.
Everyone loves their wife.
No. Constitution Hill, we'll touch on him in a bit, but John Bon.
He'd be well up there.
Yeah, if he was a girl, he'd be a 10.
Or a guy,
all can risk.
obviously.
He's sexy.
Okay. Right. For what it's worth, I thought, just going back to the Warwick race, I thought that the moment that Harry Skelton pressed the button on Calico was the exact moment that Aidan Coleman took a pull on John Bon, and it was just the stars aligned for something to happen at that moment. One horse went, the other horse. The only thing, John Bon did jump out to his right a couple of times, which was a little bit of a concern. But then under pressure in the straight, he jumped straight and true, and he finished off the race really nicely. And I know people will point to the fact that El Fabiola was only a narrow margin, which was a neck or a head away at Aintree over hurdles last year. But of course, John Bon did chase Constitution Hill pretty hard in the Supreme. El Fabiola had only had the one run so far.
Yeah, but that was inexperience, wasn't it? He's only had 7 career starts, so you're still looking at a horse whose curve's going upwards.
I don't think that was proper guide as to the two horses, was it? So I wouldn't rely on that. But I do think that John Bon's jumping is what tips me in his favour overall, bar what he did at Warwick, where he jumped out to his right a couple of times. Okay, that's the Ultima. That's the Arkle. We'll move on to the Ultima, where I think it's possible Corach Ramble might go off favourite, Pat?
I think you called that well. That's the Ultima without even looking at the race.
Yeah, the Ultima, Corach Rambler is roundabout favourite at the moment at 9-1. I was up at Kelso on Saturday, and I spoke to Lucinda Russell about Corach Rambler, and I asked her what ground the horse wanted, because we were hoping he would run in our Bet365 Gold Cup April last year, and she pulled him out because the ground was too fast for him. Mm-hmm. She said in a perfect world she'd like good to soft. And he ran ever so well, I thought, in the Betfair or the Hennessy, as veterans of the game would call it. But she did say he'll be upsides the ambulance with a lap to go because he's just got no pace at all. And he'll be plugging on and he'll be in the first 5. And she said to me that Peter Scudamore rides in work every single time. He was happy with him, and he goes to the Ultima. He won the race last year. He won easily enough in the end. He pretty much lost the first job, so he had to pass an awful lot of horses. And I think he only went up, about £6, I think it was, for that, something like that. So he's fairly handicapped. Lucinda's very happy with him. She definitely would fancy him for the Grand National, granted good to soft going conditions. So that might be one to have a speculative few quid on for the National. Were he to win this, he wouldn't get a penalty for Aintree. So, Lucinda, she's won it before, hasn't she? But she wouldn't put you off it for Cheltenham, granted good to soft. But it's been a relatively quiet betting race. 3 under through 5. People are trying to put up. The only real connection there is the Ultima, the company, is owned by Max McNeil, who owns this horse, and he wants to have a runner in the race. But you talk to Paul Nichols, and he says, well, he has been disappointing. He's dropping down in the handicap as a result of being disappointing, but he's in the equation. The one at the head of the market, Stumptown, for Gavin Cromwell. But Johnny will say he's probably going to go for another race to Kim Muir with the amateur up. So I can't really give you too much inspiration from the market movers. Oscar Elite has been backed a little bit anti-post. I don't know what you get with Oscar Elite. You got a good run last time, albeit in a 3-runner race, but he's a bit of a cliff horse. He was in my notebook for about 2 years. He's not in it anymore. And Nasalem is an interesting runner, Gary Moore. He's not gone up in this trip before, but he ran very well over 2.5 last time out. And this is his only entry at the Cheltenham meeting, so he might be of interest for Gary Moore. But I wouldn't put you off Corach Rambler, particularly if it says good to soft in the going.
Okay. Sam?
Yeah, I echo everything Pat says about Corach Rambler. He might be last with a circuit to run, but he still ran past my selection on the run-in last year, unfortunately, and produced a remarkable burst to finish 4th at Newbury, didn't he? Horses that have run in the race the previous year have got a good record on this. I think 4 of the last 12 winners have run in the race the previous year. So that's
much higher is he, Sam, actually?
It's a good point, actually. Was he last year? 146? Only up 6. Yeah. But a horse like him, it's hard to handicap him, isn't it? Because he sort of handicaps himself. He drops so far out and then finishes off. Yeah. But he's got an unbelievable engine. And, I think he's going to have a live chance in the National if he can lie up with them, isn't he? So I thought Corach Rambler and Oscar Elite. I thought Oscar Elite, he represents the novices in this race. They've got a good record. I think 5 of the last 9 winners were novices. I was quite taken with him at Ascot last time. He's had a wind operation. He's been plagued by his wind in his career, I think. but he ran really well in the race last year. And I thought at sort of 8 and 10 to 1, they would be my two against the field, really.
Yeah, I like Oscar Elliott as well. Johnny, how do you see it?
Yeah, I tipped up Fast or Slow in the column a couple of weeks ago, although I sort of said at that stage it looked like he was more likely to go for the other race he was entered into place, but he's been well back for this race today.
You've only won it twice in 54 renewals.
Yeah.
The Irish.
That is mad. That is absolutely mad, yeah. And in fairness, he was touched off in the Coral Cup last year. Ireland has a terrible record in this. I think it'd be interesting to get the views of the panel later on about like how many winners will Ireland have versus Britain. But this is the race that the British would obviously be hoping to win. But he's very interesting because he only ran, I think, once over fences in France. Then he went hurdling. I spoke to Martin Brassel recently, and he was weighing up what race to go for. But he entered them in 2 Grade 1s, and he was giving out about the programme that he didn't have anything to enter him in. He's gotten a mark of 150, which kind of looks fine, but he's been laid out for the race. I presume the tongue tie will be back on, and I like him.
Okay. I think the stat about handicaps in Britain and Ireland over hurdles, Ireland have won 80% of handicaps at the Cheltenham Festival in the last decade or so, whereas over fences it's down to 30%. So
it's a bit mad, isn't it? Yeah.
0 from 35 in the last 16 years. Irish horses in this race.
Have you got a strong view in this, Nick?
Only the Gary Moore Nassalam, I thought was staying on very well at Cheltenham, beating Il Dorado, who's come and improved the form, and I think the step up to 3 miles will help his jumping. Gary Moore, Jamie Moore, he's got a lovely weight. Could be, England's best chance of nicking one of the handicaps.
Yeah, I'd agree. And Gary seems very confident. All the vibes coming out of Gary Moore's yard is that Nassalam is going to improve for the 3 miles, and that this has sort of been the plan, and hopefully he'll find a bit. But I do like Oscar Elliott. I think that Windop has helped him, and he's run well in the race before. I like to see, obviously Coral Ramble has as well, but I like to see horses that have done well at Cheltenham, at the festival in particular. Okay, we'll move on and talk about the feature race on the opening day, and that of course is the Champion Hurdle. Pat, I think it's probably worth, obviously we know that Constitution Hill is the favourite, but maybe a market or two other than that to help us out?
Well, we are betting without Constitution Hill, and that's not as sexy either, really. We're 3-1 on State Man. So we're probably on the day bet without the two of them. But we are struggling for runners at the moment. We've held off just in case, it proves to be a 6-runner Champion Hurdle. But
the forecast is odds on then, Pat.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are some each-way bandits who are backing the likes of Vauban, and I like to move it at 14 and 16. Takes one to know one, I suppose. So they're backing those horses on the basis that there could be 7 runners, 6 runners on the day. I like to move. I thought he didn't maybe get the credit he should have deserved at Wincanton. I thought it was quite a spectacular performance. But the form book just says, look, it's in price order, isn't it? I think I'll be short and sweet. All I would say is if you're having a play spot, don't put Constitution Hill as a banker. My only flaw with the horse, he's so quick, he could just fall, couldn't he? He's so slick. I don't know what Nick would be thinking of him. And how would you ride him if you were Paul Townend on State Man? Would you try to take him on or let him do his thing? The tactics are going to be key, but from a play spot angle, it'll be a play spot buster if you got him out on the floor.
What do you think, Nick?
I just can't see a way of getting him beat because he's such a straightforward ride, and for Nico, he doesn't pull. If they don't go very fast, then he'll go forward, and if they go fast, he can sit in, and it's not like he has to be ridden in a certain way. He can go for plenty of light, he can see his hurdles. I actually think he's an electric jumper. He for a pointer, Irish pointer, he jumps he's so slick over his hurdles, and he's so measured, and
he's not made a mistake yet in his career, touching wood.
Except the point, he was going to win about 8 lengths, and apparently, I don't know, was it young Harvey rode him, and he just wanted him to pop the last, but he ran down it, and a bit like Koto Star that day, he practically fell, but he was beaten like a short head or something. And then when they went to the sales with him, I did a piece of Barry Garrett, the Irish Field, and Warren Ewing. When they went to the sales with him, he didn't look well at all, the horse. So the horse that won the race, who's done okay, I think, since point to point, made more money than Constitution Hill, even though he would have beaten him about 10 lengths. So Michael Buckley rang Garrity on the way back to say, like, I bought the horse, and he said, Garrity was like, I wish I still had the horse. The money you're after giving me, you're after robbing me here, like. And he was right. Well, absolutely right too.
Have you at the start of the season, obviously, State Man, Vauban horses to appear as challengers. State Man, a lot of chat about his jumping and how it needed to be slicker to be a big challenger. The Constitution, is he there now? Is he good enough to make a race of it?
Well, like it's funny. This is going to be the shortest price favourite ever in the Champion Hurdle, and if he weren't in it, State Man would be the shortest price ever in the Champion Hurdle. So how far can Constitution Hill win to be that good? You know, I think I don't think he's going to absolutely bolt up here. If he does, he's probably the best horse I've ever seen, because State Man, the victories that he's produced this season, how straightforward he is. I think Vauban's an exceptionally talented horse, and I know he couldn't beat Honeysuckle the last day, but she was unbeaten going into this season, and she was a wonder mare. And State Man, not really extended, beat them to go to 5 lengths, so he's really, really good. And if Constitution Hill is to laugh at these like he's laughed at almost everything, I think State Man's a lot better than Epatante. But you know, so I think he will have a race. But you know, when I got into racing, I would get quite patriotic when Ireland had a winner at Cheltenham, because in those days, you know, we'd have maybe half a dozen winners or whatever in the 18 race festival. Or the 21 race festival, and now I really want Nicky Henderson, Paul Nicholls, and even Gary Moore. I want them to have winners at Cheltenham. I want Nicky Henderson to have a good horse, and I want Constitution Hill to be one of the best we've seen.
All right. I mean,
He's not saying that when he does a preview in Ireland.
it's possible, Sam, that we could just watch this race and enjoy it.
Yeah.
You don't have to
No,
have a lash at something.
no, you don't indeed have to have a lash at something. You've got 27 other races. It's a long week. I think it's great to acknowledge a brilliant horse, and he looks a brilliant horse by popular consensus, and also everybody who watches her racing.
What Nick was saying as well about his constitution, pardon the
Yeah.
pun, but Gertie was saying that like he could put all his kids on this horse when they were any age at all. He said he was a Christian, which is probably an anachronism nowadays, but he meant that in a good way. That he was the most beautiful, laid back, placid individual, and you're not afraid he's going to pull the hands off Nico.
I think we should put the cap round for Barry, really. I'm a bit worried he's been robbed of a few quid from Michael Buckley.
I think he's all right, yeah.
I'm a big fan of State Man, but I can't have him beating Constitution Hill. I think he's done nothing wrong this year, State Man. I think he's improved his hurdling. Be interesting to see how they ride him. And I think that's why the without markets perhaps hold a little bit of interest, really, because if State Man goes into this race as a warm second favourite, you've then got to try and win the race, haven't you? And I just wonder whether it might burst him trying to do that and trying to get Constitution Hill off the bridle. There might be one or two that might pick up some pieces. I like to move it run well. He's 3 from 3 round the track. I think he's been ambitiously campaigned, like a lot of the Twiston Davis horses. I think he's probably the snide each way bet at 14-1. And just a little bit of info, a colleague of ours who will remain nameless on Racing TV told me that First Street's had a wind up since Wincanton. Didn't really go a yard that day, but he's a lot better horse than that. I think if the ground came up good, you know, with a bit of dig in it, I think 365 tonight, they're 80-1 for him. There might be 25-1 without the favourite. He might pick up some pieces late on in a race which is going to cut up quite badly.
Can I ask Pat an honest question here? Do you lay the rotten each way on State Man?
No.
No, I'm a bit like with the State Man. As Sam was saying, he's going to be trying to win the race, isn't he? That's the key. And if Constitution Hill breaks his heart, then I remember when Ishtabrak used to win his champion hurdles, Aidan O'Brien always used to run from Theatre World, who just used to come from last to second and would be like 20-1. And they would have to forecast the Aidan O'Brien team. They would say, well, you know, we know what's going to win. This one, just Tommy Tracy used to ride. I mean, just used to sit back. They used to go after Ishtabrak, and Theatre World had come sailing through. So, take a look at it without the favourite markets.
I think bookmakers get a lot of undue criticism at times, and the rotten each way betting is something that generally you shouldn't get involved in because it's not a fair bet. But at Cheltenham, you can really bet hard in races, and bookmakers will sort of like, they'll allow it because they're just too busy to even notice the difference. I think it's just so mad that like, so it's kind of one of those readings where you can have a good bet and a good accumulator as well.
Lovely to indulge at the Cheltenham Festival.
The English and bookmakers.
Absolutely. I think it's incredible. Constitution Hill, after 5 races, we're talking about him as one of the all-time greats potentially. So looking forward to enjoying him thrashing everybody on Tuesday. I think he will. The Mares Hurdle, obviously a few of them could have run in the Champion Hurdle. They've ducked that for the seemingly easier option. But actually, Pat, it's turning into a cracking race, should the ones at the top of the market line up.
Yeah, and it's interesting, the news broke today that Blazing Cal is maybe 50-50. always got the caveat with Charles Burns, you never really know. You know, if he told you he had 4 aces in his hand, I still wouldn't believe him. But I mean, I get on well with him, but you never know. But if they decide, let's say Friday or Saturday, that they're going to miss the Stayers Hurdle, then Marie's Rock, they keep talking about they'd love to step her up in trips. So tread carefully with Marie's Rock and definitely take advantage of the non-runner, no bet, whichever race you fancy her for. You can back her from both, of course. And were she to go for the Stayers, you know, she gets that allowance, which is going to be very, very key to her. I'd be more inclined to think she might go for the Stayers if there's no blazing cow. But
she might go for the Stayers even if there is blaze.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. But the market's headed by Honeysuckle, and of course she is, you know. But she's a 9-year-old. We all get slower as we get older, don't we?
Do we?
Well,
I'm getting quicker at some things, Pat.
But I think it's an interesting one. How is she going to go in the market here? Because
why was I the only one laughing at that?
I mean, she is loved by the public. She will go off at a backable price for a change. You know,
Yes.
normally in her career, she's been odds on. She's around about 9-4 with her. I think this is one of those. The professionals will be trying to take her on, and the public will think, wait a minute, 9-4.
Yeah.
You know what? 16 in a row she was, and she's not got that appreciably slower. But you are kind of left with her, aren't you? Brandy Love. Johnny, which way is she going to jump? You know, she seems to...
Well, it's funny, like this is one of the most bizarre things. She desperately needs to go left. She's hardly ever run left-handed. It's just really, I can't remember why she missed Cheltenham last year, but like, she destroyed Love Envoy subsequently, and she was so weak in the betting on her return. I think she probably must have needed to run a good bit, because as much as she was going the wrong way, it wasn't that much of a factor for much of the race, but then after the final bend, she completely hung. Like, she must have lost 5 to 8 lengths, and I think she'll be a lot sharper. She's clearly been trained for this, so I think she'll knock in each way a bit, actually.
Okay. How do you see it, Sam?
Really interesting race. You know my views on Honeysuckle. I think her constitution and her admirable tenacity and temperament have been her best features in that 18 races. I thought she actually ran quite well on decent ground at the DRF. I didn't expect her to get that close to Stateman, to be honest, especially when he got out and dominated and hurdled well. So I don't think that was too bad an effort, but I think there's got to be something in here that I'd rather back than her at sort of 9-4. Epatante apparently did a blistering piece of work last Tuesday at Kempton. They're very happy
Is that
with her.
true, Pat, or did she not?
Is that on the Platinum Service, Pat?
What did you
Because
hear
I'm the
about
peasant
Epatante's
service,
work?
I get.
I'll have a word with my mole during the break and report back.
You and Mick Fitz are like that, aren't they?
If it's Mick Fitz, then she definitely worked well.
Yeah, absolutely, guaranteed. And I think the fact that they're keen to bump Marie's Rock up to the Stayers is probably a tip for Epatante in itself, so that's probably the way I'd go.
Okay, so you like Brandy Love each way. Is there anything?
Better of a race, actually. Like, I'm not a
It
fan
is
of
a
the mayor's
cracking
race,
race,
but this
I'm
is...
not a fan of the Mayor's.
Yeah,
Thank God for the Mayor's Hurdle. It's a brilliant race.
No, it isn't.
Oh,
Like, if you had the mayor's races back in the day, nobody would have heard of Dawn Run. Do you know, that's the sad thing about it. Nobody would have heard of her. She wouldn't have won a champion hurdle.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have won a Gold Cup, and it would have been like, Dawn who? Like, you know.
Don't
it's
you
just,
start.
it's not having it at all. But this is a cracker, to be fair. This is,
It
and
is.
they wouldn't have any chance in the champion hurdle, realistically, bar an accident. So this is a great race this year.
and you think so? Brandy Love's your selection, or are you thinking? something
Yeah,
else?
I like Brandy
Okay.
Love. When you consider Epatante, Honeysuckle, 2 champion hurdle winners, albeit maybe a little bit in decline. Love Invoice had a great season. I think, you know, I love that story of there were a couple of features on her on Racing TV as well. Haven't mentioned Echoes in Rain, who's a seriously good horse. I think she's a little bit of a dog at times. I think she needs things to fall right, but she was very good at Nace. Wouldn't be the worst champion hurdle in the world if this were it.
Yeah. Well, of course, Honeysuckle's going for a 4th consecutive win at the Cheltenham Festival. Nick, do you see her as still the standard setter in this race?
God, look at her record. You know, she's phenomenal. I don't think anyone's given her enough respect for what she's achieved. She, you know, a mare winning the champion hurdle the way she has. I think her record's something 16 from 19 runs. You know, that's phenomenal. And you know, it's really sporting of the owners to have another go. This could be her last swan song to go out and win at the festival. And I'm sure you'll see her progeny in years to come. And you know, I can't see any of the others. They got bit fine with the ratings. You put any of those for me in the champion hurdle, they wouldn't see which way they're gone. Whereas I think Honeysuckle would at least be there turning in. Like Love Envoy struggled to get home off 139 at the beginning of the year. You put Honeysuckle in a handicap off 139, should be winning it with a header in the chest. So, yeah, for me, Honeysuckle needs respect.
Okay. I mean, I must admit that I've been underwhelmed by her performances this season, but they're still in comparison to how she's run her whole career. However, this is one race that, assuming Marie's Rock doesn't run in it, because I do love Marie's Rock, and if she goes for the Stairs Hurdle, it's one race that I just, for sentiment reason alone, I'll watch and hope that Honeysuckle finishes off her career.
I think Rishi there's a Honeysuckle factor. Rachel Blackmore has done more for racing, I think, than anyone.
It would be
in
something
years.
incredible.
And then you've like the loss of Jack de Bromhead, which I think like moved Irish racing community like almost never before. It was just so sad, and I think the emotion if this horse wins will be just off the charts. And if you're having a bet in the race that isn't Honeysuckle, you'll enjoy that aspect of it if she wins.
Indeed, I will be rooting for sentiment in the Mayor's Hurdle myself. Less sentiment, I'm hoping for, Pat, in the Boodles. What have you got?
Well, Irish horses have dominated the market for this, and it's just and when it comes to pricing these races up like the Boodles, you just go for what's happened in the past, and the Irish horses have usually done well. They've usually done well with a horse who wouldn't be worth entering in the Triumph Hurdle itself, would be held on the book that day, but would come into this race attractively handicapped. So say hello to Takeo of J.P. McManus, Willie Mullins, who was an honourable, shall we say, tenderly ridden place behind Lossy Mouth. And as soon as he crossed the line, everyone in the office we were just pinging messages around, make this favourite, make this favourite. Yeah. So he's priced accordingly. He's 4-1 with us at the moment. It doesn't seem to me to be the bargain of the century, but when you go through them all, you do look at it and you think, well, actually, I do know this will run in this race and will be all the rage, and I'm sure JP will be getting good reports from the connections. It does scream, this could be a real good gamble. There was money in the office today for Biker, trained by our good friend Charles Burns, and again, he fits the bill as well. I remember being at Windsor one night when he made all the running over 1.5 miles, so he's a strong type. I wonder if he put his son up on it or try and get maybe Davy Russell aboard or see what happens there. But he seems to rate his son. Is it Philip, isn't it?
Philip.
Yeah, he claims the 5, so don't be surprised if he's there. So there was money around for him. You just wonder from a value point of view if the bookmakers are going, putting all the chips on the table saying, we know we're going to lay these Irish horses, and maybe there's an English horse that could be attractively priced. Yep. I can't see it at the moment, but the bookmakers are definitely going all in on this one. We're putting the Irish horses at the head of the market. And of course, the handicapper has nudged them up a few pounds for their sins for coming over.
Sam, the Boodles runner?
Yeah, just a couple of quick stats. Willie Mullins 0 from 17 in this race. Since its inception, obviously he got beat a quarter of an inch last year, and Gaelic Warrior went off 13 to 8 in this race. So if you do fancy Takao, 4-1 might not be a bad price. British bred horses 0 from 59 in the race. 2 prominent ones here. Affadil.
That's insane.
And it's mad,
that
isn't
just
it?
makes no sense.
The French and the Irish dominate this. Affadil is one. Nusret, third favourite with Bet365, another. I'm with Pat. I was hoping he was going to give us a strong word from Charles for Biker. Nice handicapping type, 1.5-mile horse, robust, strong horse. Didn't think he got maximum ride last time, if I'm honest, off a slow pace. I think he had 1.5 encouragement from the persuader after the last, and just closed in nicely on Sir Alan. I thought it was a good run. I'll pass on a mention for Shared as well, who's going to be Harry Derham's first runner, friend of the show, first Cheltenham runner. Sits at the bottom of the weights off 122. Tough, hard-knocking little horse who's taken well to jumping. Sort of 2 from 3 over hurdles. I think he's off 122, which will see him at the bottom. Traditionally, bottom weights haven't got a great record in this race. It usually goes to the classier horses that are probably on the cusp of running the Triumph Hurdle. But I like the way that he knuckled down at Doncaster. It was a good effort. I could see him coming up the hill well. And I'm sure, Pat, you're going to offer 6 and 7 places, and because you're generous bookmakers, aren't you?
Yeah, that's the one thing I would say to everyone. With these handicaps, we are now in an era of first 5s and first 6s. So, there's definitely going to be good angles. I mean, we had a 16-runner handicap at Kelso on Saturday. We were first 5. So you suddenly tell us you got a 24-runner handicap, then you'll have first 6 options. If not with us, then with other firms. But this is a meeting where the message goes round from the directors. If you could be level at this meeting and get thousands of new accounts, we'll take that. Don't go thinking you have to win at this meeting. So, you know, we can say, well, you know, we did go 6 places. That's why we lost on the race.
Well, you normally win 10 million when Man City get beaten in the Champions League on the Wednesday night. So it's
Well, that's it. You know, you could have a losing day at Cheltenham one day, and if Djokovic gets beaten at tennis, you've got it all straight back again. So,
yeah, what a lovely thought. Everything's about backing losers. Isn't it? So, give us a winner for the Boodles.
We were at Huntington yesterday, and I gave my nap of the day as Man United.
Oh Jesus!
So we're at the train station, and so Liverpool scored. I was like, all right, so half time, you know, probably okay. And I don't know, went to chat to someone, came back. The lads were like, it's 3-0. I was like, anyway. So has there been a Japanese breadwinner of this race? It's Cougar. I like Cougar.
they win everything else.
Yeah, Cougar obviously for the connections that won the race last year. Almost forgotten that Brazil won this. I don't know what to make of his run at Leopardstown the last day. I asked Porrick Roach, and he said he was just too free. You know, it's hard to know at times, but he's a strong stayer on the flat. He stays 1.5 miles. He jumps brilliantly. He's gotten a mark of 129. Wouldn't be mad on the favourite, to be honest, just at the prices. I think he's not straightforward. So I really like Cougar each way in this.
Yeah, Nick, what do you think? Anything?
I normally like horses that have run plenty and got a bit of hardship over hurdles, because it's a big shock from going around 6-runner juvenile hurdles on a weekday to going into an 18-runner handicap, and they always go hard in this race, and you need one that stays. That's the key thing. And but saying that, my fancy was Arkle, who come from Sir Mark Prescott, went to Nicky Henson's, finished second in a listed race at Donny, and I thought that this had Fred Winter all over it, but Nicky Henson can't be thinking it's going to get a run. I think it's I was just looking, 36 on the list, and he's entered it at Sandown on Saturday, so he must be thinking he's not getting a run. He'll probably win on Saturday, there's a tip, but I think if it does get into the Fred Winter, I think Arkle off the lightweight will run a big race.
Yeah, I was speaking to David Minton about Arkle the other day, and Nicky's done too good a job. He can't get in the race, unfortunately. So, yeah, she might go, as Nick says, Sandown, or there's a valuable race at Ascot, I think, Juvenile Hurdle at Ascot after Cheltenham, which
I thought
you
and Pat were coming in and tell us how Arkle has been working. But I was hoping Bo Zenith was going to go for the race, but reading what Gary Moore was saying in the Racing Post today, seems as if he might be avoiding Cheltenham altogether with it.
That'd be a tip for Perseus Way?
Well, if Perseus Way does line up, I thought Perseus Way was unlucky. I thought he might have beaten Nusret at Kempton. But having said that, I think Bo Zenith is a high-class horse potentially. Very highly thought of. Beat Blood Destiny in France. Forget the first run at Sandown. It was just too bad to be true, and then knuckled down quite nicely to win a Haydock. So if he were to turn up, he would be what I would back. We'll spin through the National Hunt Chase if we can. The clock is ticking, Pat, so if you could give us a brief idea of the market.
Yeah, 3 miles, 6 furlongs, long old way, isn't it? Galliard de Mesnil is even money favourite. The form book points to a mighty run from him, doesn't he? He's been well supported. Yep. How many winners will Willie Mullins have had by day 1, race 7? Who knows? But we could be behind the 8 ball if he's had 4 or 5, that's for sure. But there are other horses that have emerged each way. Mr. Coffee. I'm sure we've all backed Mr. Coffee in some point in our lives and been frustrated with him. He's yet to win over fences. Derek O'Connor has been booked to ride though, so you're getting a master craftsman there. And there's been money today for Chemical Energy of Gordon Elliott, who won by 1 million miles here early on in the year. And what I couldn't figure out after that race, Gordon Elliott said that's it, he won't run again till this very race. And then he turned up last month on soft ground, and he ran disappointingly. So this is the classic. If you pretend it didn't happen, I can see wisdom in his each-way claims. But the form book points to the favourite. Likely winner, yes. Price, dreadful.
Okay. Gaillard de Mesnil for you?
Favourite wins.
Favourite wins, easy. Johnny, favourite wins?
Yeah, I don't like calling the Fred Winter the Boodles, because it's the Boodles sponsor the Gold Cup, so we're gonna, Fred Winter was like a legend, and I think, so some of the changes they made, I can't remember the names of races anymore. This race is absolutely pointless. It serves no purpose whatsoever. Like, just run them in the RSA and get on with it. Like, if this race were, honestly, if this were the feature in Fairy House on a Wednesday, there wouldn't be much talk about it at all. It's just one of these races with a lot of slow Irish horses, including Malor Mission, who was 61 lengths behind Chemical Energy.
Did Manana Rocco not beat Native River in this race?
Yeah, but that, it's...
Tiger Roll, wasn't it?
I'm dragging it out here. Sorry.
But
John.
you run them in the RSA. Like this is, in fairness, this wasn't a race they added on. They've just changed it to appease the people who've no interest in racing. You know, go figure. But Mallow Mission, John McConnell, I actually asked him yesterday, should I tip him up for the race at the thingamajig, and he said yes. So he's a very good horse, and I think he's rock solid each way. Jumps well, stays well. John's having a great season. Pointless race.
Okay. Have you got a tip for this pointless race?
Is Pat doing prices on if anything gets thrown out on the whip bands? Because this is the race.
This is the race.
Anyone that goes 4 over 7.
And this is the race that they've changed to appease the bandwagon. You know, so.
You think 3 mile 6 there'd be a few hitting double figures on the way round. So
do you still pay out even if they go 12 over?
Can anyone remember who won the race last year? Just off the top of your
They
head.
don't get chucked out till a week later, so you're fine.
Yeah.
Statler, yeah. Good race.
In fairness, you can't throw up winners. I just say, look, it's the RSA, but a bit longer.
He's third favourite for a Gold Cup, Statler. It's a quality heat, this.
Galvin won it as well, didn't he? And he was second favourite in the Gold Cup last year. Yeah.
What a good race it's proved to be over the
Good
years.
race, actually.
Well, I think that wraps up our preview for day 1 of the Cheltenham Festival. Previews of day 2, 3 and 4 coming. Once again, thank you all very much for joining us for this live episode of Racing Weekly, brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365.